Good evening and welcome. I'm Pooja Shali. In this special telecast, I'm going to focus on the Congress Working Committee meeting because here Sonia Gandhi has said, I am a full-time president. But the highlight of that meeting was a clear message to the G23 leaders, her own veteran members of the party who had been asking for reform. Congress's interim party president has given a clear warning to the dissenters and said and given them a cautioned word not to speak to her through the media, come directly. She's further added that Congress party will soon have internal elections if required for the president position. Take a look at this report and then I'll return for more.
राहुल जी को अध्यक्ष बनाने की मांग उठी। आप चाहते हैं कि राहुल जी भी अध्यक्ष हो? लोगों के जो एक्सपेक्ट मी टू टॉक, आप लोगों के जो
The bid to revive the grand old party, the Gandhis' attempt to craft a new Congress. The Congress Working Committee meet was held to diffuse tension, dissent, the implosion and unending chaos in the grand old party. Sonia Gandhi, the interim president, had a lot on her plate as she chaired the crucial Congress meet on Saturday. But first on her agenda was a dressing down to the party's critics, the very vocal rebel G23 leaders. Sonia Gandhi reminded the dissenters that she was a full-time and hands-on Congress president, contrary to their allegations. And no issue of public importance had been ignored by the grand old party, she said. Sonia also sent out a stern warning to the G23 leaders, cautioning them not to speak to her through the media. Sonia's tough talk comes after repeated attacks from the G23, who've questioned the lack of a full-time president. The rebels, though, claimed all was well at the meeting.
जो भी है वो spokesperson आप लोगों को अभी brief करेंगे, आपको सब पता चल जाएगा. बहुत अच्छी मीटिंग हुई.
While the schedule for Congress Party's organizational polls was announced in June itself, it was delayed due to COVID restrictions. Now, the poll process has been rescheduled and Congress leadership has assured party members that it will be completed by September next year.
During the meeting, Sonia Gandhi also pointed out that there was a delay in the Congress presidential polls scheduled for July 2021 due to the COVID pandemic and said that the party was ready for internal polls and a roadmap would be out soon. And speaking of polls, Sonia also assured that the Congress was ready to take the fight to the BJP in the upcoming state elections in 5 states. But the highlight of her speech was loud and clear, especially to her critics. Don't take my silence to be the leadership's weakness.
The CWC was convened to discuss internal issues and cull dissent. But the Congress president made full use of the opportunity to train guns on Modi regime and set the tone for party's agenda for the upcoming assembly polls. With camera person Sanjay Kumar, this is...
So for today's discussion, I have very important voices and I want to now introduce our panel today. Pawan Khera, one of the strongest voices that the Congress party has today as a spokesperson, is joining me. On the other side is Sanjay Jha. Now remember, he was removed as party spokesperson on anti-party charge, but he stays defiant. And just a short while ago, he has again reacted and said, it's a cryptic tweet, Sanjay, but he has said, change or perish, there is no third option. And likely enjoying all of this as a spectacle is the Bharatiya Janata Party, the young and dynamic spokesperson, Tuhin Sinha. But I want to start with you, Sanjay. Why change or perish? The Congress president, working president today has said, come to me, deal with me directly, don't go through media. Isn't that what you also had asked for? Isn't that now you think a promise fulfilled?
You know, Pooja, first and foremost, all of us who have been supporters of the Congress party, whether part of G23, somebody suspended like me, it doesn't matter. You know, we have all been anguished by the fact that the Bharatiya Janata Party has not received the kind of competition it deserved from the grand old party. I do believe, and I'm very confident, that if the Congress party were to resurrect itself, you know, be the robust kind of political organization it is capable of doing, then you will not find the BJP being as arrogant and as hubris doing the stuff it does. And I think that's been a huge disappointment. My tweet is actually very crystal clear. I do believe that if the Congress doesn't wake up from this Rip Van Winkle sleep, it is actually facilitating the entry of Mr. Modi's third term in 2024. And that will be a monumental tragedy, because all heads of states that have battled and failed in containing the pandemic have all lost elections. India has had record unemployment, farmer distresses for you to see what's going on at the moment. You have had issues in foreign policy, governance, democracy, the whole issue of really getting the economy back on track, democracy under threat. And yet the Congress as a party that, frankly speaking, doesn't just have to get its act together, but has to be the linchpin of the opposition, is failing in its job. Now, Pawan is a very, very dear friend of mine. He's been a colleague of mine for several years. But I can tell you this, he will defend it. I know he'll defend it vigorously. But I believe the Congress, if it doesn't change now, it is not just letting down its own 11 crore voters.
No, but let's get one point straight before I go across to Pawan. Sanjay, don't you think this assurance coming in from Sonia Gandhi today is enough? That come speak to me directly. I'm a full-time president. I'm always available.
Well, I go back to what Mr. Rahul Gandhi said in 2019 when we lost the Lok Sabha elections. I actually applauded and appreciated his decision to say, I'm staying away from this job. As a leader, I take accountability. Nobody asked him to do that. He did it of his own volition. And he said, I'm not coming back as the Congress president, and neither is my family.
Yes.
Now, it doesn't mean that, you can't change your mind later. 3 years later, that's by 2022, it'll be the 4th year. And think about what an ordinary person who's watching your program, Pooja, is thinking, that if the Congress party can't even elect its own leader, it can't even get its own act together.
Yes.
If members of G23 who are established political characters, if they are given, such a
Pawan, that is a fair point, isn't it? We have also been observing, reporting 2019, Rahul Gandhi steps down, takes responsibility, Sonia Gandhi takes over. There's also a brief hiatus there. And she clearly has several other personal issues to take care of, including health. The Congress party doesn't even have a solid president at this moment. And when somebody's descending, Sonia Gandhi says, I'm available. Why are you going to the media? Does that solve the purpose? There's a stronger, united Modi-Shah duo of the BJP ready to even win 2024.
Pooja, in the last 2 years, not once as a spokesperson have I observed, felt that there is a problem with our full-fledged Congress president. No.
Why?
It doesn't affect my performance as a spokesperson because decisions are taken. Now, if the decisions are not liked by my friend Sanjay Jha, there are problems in every organization, in every family. Now, if there is a problem in my family, do you expect me to go on the rooftop of my neighbor and start shouting against my family members or my parents or my siblings? I don't think that's a good character. I'm sorry. I would never do that. And I wouldn't really respect anyone who does that. There are platforms available. You can write a letter, you can communicate, you can bump into each other in meetings. There are a plethora of platforms. Don't you think I may have gone through my own moments of frustration within the party? Have you ever observed me or many of my senior colleagues go public? No, that's not the way an organization should function. We wait for our turn. We do communicate whatever needs to be communicated. At times it's accepted.
But it is a very valid point that has been raised that Congress has to have a reform. Now Rahul Gandhi says, I will consider taking up as the president position. This is very confusing. What are you telling your supporters and your cadre, Pawan?
Pooja, what is the reform are we talking about? Are we talking about structural reform, functional reform, ideological? What is the reform we are talking about? Well, decisions are taken in a party. Every party reinvents, especially Congress party.
Yes.
Over the last history of 135 years of Congress, every decade or latest decade and a half, the Congress has reinvented itself. What reform are you talking about? Please, let's go through the history of my party and we'll realize the lecture of reform is not to be given to the Congress.
Okay. Sanjay wants to respond to that.
It has to be given to the RSS. Just a sec. Let me finish. It has to be given to the RSS, which doesn't fight elections, which is not registered, which has a self-proclaimed head who calls himself Sarsang Chalak. It's a cultural organization, God damn it, and it's running my country. without fighting elections.
Both the opposing panelists are smiling, and I want to know why. Yes. Let's go across to Sanjay. Sanjay wants to interject to that. Sanjay, why are you smiling?
Pooja, let me tell you this, and I say this because I'm aware. Members of the G23, somebody like myself, we were compelled to go public, write articles, talk to media, because the internal platforms within the Congress party, frankly speaking, were non-existent. Now, Pawan probably has some access to, the kind of channels whereby he can possibly get his way across. But you're talking of a big party, right? You're talking about a place that should be welcoming criticism. I have grown up with the old school of thought that you surround yourself with people who challenge your decisions. I would have liked Rahul Gandhi to actually encourage people in the G23 and beyond and say, tell me, why are we so messed up? Why are we losing? Listen to the people who tell you where you're wrong. Otherwise, you're back to that chamcha culture. And that is the Darbari politics that affects all parties at some point. Now, I agree with Pawan that probably this is a disease or a bug that affects all. But the Congress, for God's sake, is at the receiving end of election results for a long time. The BJP is in a surplus. It is a winning party. It has the luxury of misdemeanors. It has the luxury of shenanigans.
Tuhin, when you listen to these two strong Congress...
Pooja, I'd like to...
Pawan, respond, yes.
Because it's got to do with Congress, so give me more time than my friend Tuhin.
Yes, then you can Sanjay, also respond to my question and to that, Pawan, that if Sonia Gandhi is the president now, why is the suggestion coming in to make Rahul Gandhi as president? That also will happen in 2022, end of 2022. What is happening? 2 saal mein to elections hai.
Number one, Pooja, I'll start from your question. Sonia Gandhi, for all those people who are in the Congress or who were in the Congress and yet not aware who is the party president, for God's sake, I hope today their general knowledge was sorted out. Sonia Gandhi is our president, full stop.
Working president.
And she's our president. Working, what do you mean working, not working? She's my president. How does it affect my performance as a spokesperson, whether she's called a working president or a full-fledged president? It doesn't affect me. It doesn't affect any of those people who occupy offices. They have their tasks there for them to perform. If they don't perform, I'm sorry, it's their fault.
So what is Sanjay Jha saying? Nobody gets opportunity. They are forced to react. They are forced to go to the media.
That's bizarre. That's bizarre. Each one of us knows how to communicate. For God's sake, Sanjay Jha is an able communicator. He's a very good writer. You don't have to go public. Well, criticize in private, support in public. That's how organizations work. Now, he's saying, chamcho, what do you mean, chamcha? May I repeat my question? If you have a misunderstanding within your family, do you go on the rooftop of your neighbor and shout against your family? And say, कि नहीं, मैं chamcha नहीं हूँ. I'm sorry, आप परिवार के भी सदस्य नहीं हैं अगर ऐसा करेंगे तो. ये क्या तरीका है साहब कि नहीं मैं तो पड़ोसी
I want to get in a word from the Bharatiya Janata Party, yes, because Bharatiya Janata Party's biggest fear is getting a strong opposition, and Congress at that point has failed to take on your party. But are you concerned at some point? The manner in which I saw this woman today in the CWC, in her 70s, still very strong, telling her dissenters to come to me directly, is a strong stand. Does that put the Bharatiya Janata Party in a position to say, what if actually the Congress party comes out stronger and becomes a problem for the BJP?
So, Pooja, the last time the CWC had met to elect a new Congress president, that was on 24th August 2019, if I'm not mistaken. And what happened at the end of the day? Because they did not manage to find a new president, Rahul Gandhi came out at around 8 p.m. in the evening and peddled a brazen falsehood that there is bloodshed in the Kashmir Valley. Pakistan picked that up to browbeat India internationally. So first of all, let me express my gratitude to the Congress party that they have not resorted to any of these gimmicks. Rather, they have very brazenly pushed the election by 1 year. No, we don't have, we would love to see Rahul Gandhi as the president of the Congress party. Trust me, we
you
really...
would love that. Why would you love that?
For that day. Please don't interfere. But the problem right now with the Congress party is twofold, and that goes beyond the election.
No, I want to get to that point. Tuhin, why would you love if Rahul Gandhi becomes the president?
No, he's an asset for the BJP. I think we don't need to elaborate so much on that. He's an asset for the BJP. But let me also explain to you that the problem with the Congress right now goes beyond electing the president. This has also been pointed out, forget me, forget Sanjay Jha. This has also been pointed out by Prashant Kishore, who was on the verge of joining the party. there is a huge amount of structural lacunae which remains unaddressed and which cannot be covered by tragedy tourism. Secondly, on the ideological front, the hypocrisy is so brazen. You know, while they make a beeline for Lakhimpur Kheri, did they even pass a resolution today on what happened in Sindhu border? Is championing Dalit rights limited to having a Dalit CM in Punjab? Has anybody tweeted for the last 24 hours? I've been searching Rahul Gandhi's tweets on the issue. So I think the problem is twofold. One is ideological, the other is structural, and the very fact that Sonia Gandhi at this age has to reiterate that I'm a 24-hour president shows that there is a section within the Congress party which does not believe so.
Pawan, do you want to respond to that?
Well, Mr. Tuhin Sinha is directly attacking the Prime Minister because Mrs. Gandhi and the Prime Minister are roughly the same age. So I think he's just passed a no-confidence motion against Mr. Narendra Modi. It's between him and Mr. Modi. I don't want to get into that. Beyond flippant remarks, Rahul Gandhi, and I said, I don't want to respond to flippant remarks or responding to what a manager or a trickster or a tactician has said. I come back to the fundamental aspect. Has Rahul Gandhi failed as a leader of the opposition in raising issues at the right time in the loudest possible voice in the last 2 years? No. Whether he is the president or not, he has been able to beat every single opposition leader within the Congress also. When it comes to fighting Mr. Modi and the RSS, the demon of RSS, Mr. Rahul Gandhi has failed.
On social media, Pawan,
no one,
not really taking out there on the streets.
Just a sec. Don't interrupt, Pooja. What do you mean social media? He went to Hathras. He went to Lakhimpur Kheri. He goes where he is required. Now, Tuhin Sinha says Sindhu border पे ट्वीट नहीं किया. आप अरेस्ट नहीं करते हत्यारे को, फिर देखते हम क्या करते. अरे जहां अरेस्ट कर दिया हम वहां भी आपका विरोध कर रहे हैं. क्या चाहते हो आप साहब? आप इतने खिलाफ क्यों अपनी सरकार के कि बार बार कांग्रेस को कहते हो हमारा विरोध करो, हमारा विरोध करो. करेंगे ना. आप मत एक्शन लीजिए सिंधु बॉर्डर के हत्यारे के खिलाफ, फिर देखिए कांग्रेस क्या करती है.
Sanjay, yes. No, what I found interesting was, Sanjay, what Pawan is saying. Yes. Okay, Rahul Gandhi's comments may be getting taken by Pakistan for propaganda, but this infighting within the Congress is also being enjoyed by the Bharatiya Janata Party.
Well, Pooja, if I was the Bharatiya Janata Party, I would definitely gloat with joy at Congress's discomfiture. Why not? It's a competitive political space, and if your opponent is murdering himself, is committing suicide, you don't have to murder them. Simple. And I think there's one point that Pawan must know, and this is what I've been very disappointed with Rahul Gandhi, and I'm going to say so very explicitly on your show, Pooja. You know, at an early stage, and I knew him at that point of time, in the Congress, he wanted the primaries of the US model for electing people at different levels in the organization. And what are US primaries, right? Where people from the same party go and argue their case, they take on each other, criticize each other, and one of the wins, everyone backs it. That's the kind of vibrant internal democracy a Congress party needs, where a Pawan Khera takes on a Sanjay Jha, takes on a Sachin Pilot, takes on a Manish Tiwari, takes on a Tharoor, and when, say, Dr. Tharoor wins or Sachin wins, everybody backs him.
Pawan, so yes, so sort of do you think that could have perhaps made the Congress party stronger? It's the grand old party, and for now it appears that it's giving all its weight to the BJP. Yes, Pawan.
Why would I take the advice of a man who goes public, helping BJP gloat in his own words? Why would I take his advice on how to reform my party?
No, he's asking for reforms in the party, Pawan. That's not helping the BJP.
Just a second. Don't interrupt, please. I respect Sanjay Jha, but I'm sorry. I respect Sanjay Jha as a human being, not as a man who's gone on the rooftop of the neighbor shouting against my family. I won't tolerate that. And I will not take his advice seriously. I know how to reform my party. And we have done that in the past, despite Pawan Khera, despite Sanjay Jha, and despite the so-called G23. I won't call them 23. It's 2-3. Sanjay wants to count him in 2-3, then it's
Pawan, but the fact on ground remains that one by one, the Congress party is also losing its states where it is strong. For example, Karnataka, where it does have a strong cadre, then again some other sort of problem emerges. There's infighting in other states. All this while, when the BJP is very clear that Modi and Shah are the ones on the top, Pawan.
Pooja, have you had a debate on Subramanian Swamy's tweets every day against the government?
Of course we have.
Where's the show? I'd love to participate in that program.
Of course we have. Sure,
Subramanian Swamy goes public every day against the economic policies of the government, against the foreign policies of the government.
Okay.
Where is the debate? I would love to participate in that.
Sure, we have had debates. I will call you on that as well.
Thank you. But remind me if you had one. I don't think you had a debate in the last 10 days on his 8 tweets against the government.
There have been several instances also going on, but I'll take you on that. If there is a debate, yes, I will call you, Pawan, for sure. I want to give that closing comment to Tuhin that at this point that the Congress is alleging it's all over the place. What do you have to say? Yes.
With CWC, why should Tuhin Sinha do the closing comment? I'm sorry.
It's because he hasn't got a chance, Pawan. That's the only point. That's the only way.
Let him Sinha. The opening comment would be by Sanjay Jha. Why do you have the Congress?
That's because he hasn't got much chance to speak. Yes.
Sanjay Jha से शुरुआत करते हैं और तुहिन सिन्हा से समाप्त करते हैं, ऐसा क्यों?
Don't get into conspiracy theories, Pawan. You've got enough chances to speak. Yes.
I will need to question you. The program is on CWC. It is started by Sanjay Jha and it's ended by Tuhin Sinha.
Where you also got enough opportunities, Pawan. Okay. Okay, that's all the time I have for. I'll have to wrap up, but the fact remains India needs a strong opposition. And that is my view to the Congress party spokesperson, Pawan Khera.
Yes, but
yes, at this point, will this now, Sonia Gandhi's statement, gentlemen, it's all for democracy eventually. Will Sonia Gandhi's statement today help? As Kapil Sibal had earlier referred to the word Ji Hazuri, will now the Congress party come together, become a strong opposition, put out their differences, or will the BJP enjoy this spectacle for 2024 as well? It's a wrap on this bulletin for now. Thank you so much for watching. You can always log on to indiatoday.in for all the latest.